So my name is Rich Johnson. I'm an interior designer here in Dayton. I lived and worked in New York for about 25 years, and I relocated here a few years ago. And one of the first people I met was Dana Wiley. And so on behalf of Dana and her gallery, I want to welcome you here tonight. We also wanted to thank CultureWorks and also the Hub. This was a last-minute change, relatively speaking, so thank you to them for letting us use the space and for making it happen. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rodney, and he's going to introduce LaFrae, and we're in for a great show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, everyone, thank you all for coming out to Rodney Veals and... Oh! I love it. That's what I love about it. It's live and real. Well, everyone, welcome to Rodney Veals Inspired by podcast by ThinkTV. It's a production of ThinkTV and CET Connect. We're your local PBS affiliates, and we cannot thank the Dana Wiley Gallery and the Epic Group, CultureWorks, and all of you for taking the time out to come and listen to this really, really lovely conversation I'm going to have with this fabulous person. So, here we go. This is LaFrae Sci. Now, those who may not know who she is, LaFrae is an award-winning musician, educator, big thinker, and big-hearted, passionate. And when I tell you that this woman has beats and grooves, she has beats and grooves. And I've known her for a while. I realized we collaborated on a project together in 2013 with City Folk. We were talking about it upstairs. And just her love and passion for music and her love and passion for getting other people to be inspired by music has made an impact and impression on me. It's a joyous friendship. So we're going to have this conversation today. So without further ado, this is LaFrae Sci, everyone. Give it up.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney.
Oh, I love it. So going back, we got to go way back. It's almost like we're going in the time machine.
Okay.
We talked about it upstairs. You weren't born in Dayton, but you were raised in Dayton. Explain that story to folks so that people understand.
Sure. So my father was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and my parents moved to Beaver Creek, Ohio, and still live in the same house in 1972. And I did graduate. I went to Carroll. I graduated from Beaver Creek High School, and I actually went to prom with Rich.
There is 1 degree of separation in this town. I always love it.
Which was awesome. And so my mother was the director, curator, and site manager of the Paul Ernst Dunbar House for 20-some odd years. So I grew up basically over on Dunbar. So, yeah.
Yeah, you grew up in Dunbar.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious, when did the music bug, when did that, like you said, this is me? Like, I mean, I've always known you as this musical entity, but when did it take hold? I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's interesting. You described it as a bug. I truly believe that we are all musicians and that everyone is a drummer and a vocalist. And this whole American Idol thing really just kind of did us a disservice. We all have our own voices. We all have a sense of rhythm and timing or not, but even so, there's different types of grooves. And I want to say that artistic expression was nurtured. I'm grateful for that in my family. However, I also have some memories of like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. First of all, DC used to be, back in the day.
Way back in the day.
DC used to be over on 3rd Avenue?
Yeah,
3rd Street.
Yeah,
3rd Street. Sorry,
yes.
I'm getting avenues and streets. It's a New York thing. Back on 3rd Street. And my mom actually taught technique classes at DC.
I didn't, and that's why I discovered that. I realized, oh my God.
Yeah, well, Mom went to Hampton University, one of the historically black colleges, and studied dance and choreography. And so that's a big thing for her. And so I remember being in the DC studios when Mom was teaching, and there was drumming, and watching the drums and kind of being like, yo, yeah. And I know my mom really wanted me to dance, but it was the drums that spoke to me. And then another moment when I really was like, I can do that. I graduated from Oberlin, but I had a break. And it was a bit of a breakdown because I was studying something that I wasn't passionate about.
Okay.
So they invited me to not return. And
I love how you got an invitation to say thanks, but no thanks. But
they invited me. They invited me to take a pause and to not return, with an opportunity to try to fight it, but I didn't. And I moved to Dayton. I used to live on Riverfront Terrace. John and Don were my landlords.
Oh my gosh! And if John and Don are Don Hagelman and John Rodriguez. John Rodriguez was a phenomenal ballet teacher. He was my ballet instructor and Emily's ballet instructor as well. I mean, he taught all of us. And Don Hagelman was this amazing musician and advocate for people to be artists. I mean, they were a cool couple.
They were a fantastic couple, and they lived on the Riverview Terrace.
Riverview Terrace.
It was a repurposed
right
firehouse.
Yes, and it used to be the Jane Reese house.
Okay, so right across the street were some buildings, and they would rent to the young dancers, but I had met them, and I moved in, $85 a month. $85 a month. I actually was working as a custodian at the Victoria, and then I got hired as the box office manager for City Folk. And then City Folk really blew my mind because, I mean, look, in 1 year, I got to meet Shirley Horn, Jay McShann, the Leaders, Sister Carol. You know what I mean? Here I am, this young, impressionable. And the Leaders was basically art ensemble of Chicago, plus and minus a couple members. And I remember the drummer, Don Moyer. I was standing, looking through the curtains at the Victoria, which everybody knows was the Victory. Come on.
It's
a Victory.
It's
the Victoria.
And gender.
And yeah, it was a whole thing. We were like, what? And I watched Don Moyer, and I thought to myself, I can do that. So those were some real moments that I remember.
So I'm kind of curious, like, what was the thing that Oberlin said to you should take a pause on that you were pursuing, and why?
Yeah,
why were you pursuing it?
I really wanted to be creative, but I mean, naturally, my parents really wanted me to do something practical. And even though they nurtured my creativity,
right,
they wanted me to have something to fall back on, right? And that's love, right? That's love. And so I was studying political theory and economics, and I just,
Political science degree.
Yeah.
Guys. Just letting you know, dance. Yeah.
Yeah. So
did the same thing. That's what
it really wasn't doing it for me. And I think coming home and kind of taking a pause and then seeing all the great art firsthand, and between what was going on with City Folk, the National Folk Festival, when they brought that here, and DC was also at 126 North Main at that point, and then Memorial Hall was hopping. There was lots of stuff happening. I mean, Sweet Honey and the rocking Memorial Hall on the regular. So I mean, this was inspiration.
Yeah, this is the ground central.
Jerry Gelati.
We were having this
Jerry
conversation about
Gelati, Jillies.
That was like our first concerts were Jillies, and so it's kind of interesting to be in a community where you're so surrounded by art from literally the phrase art from every angle is really true about Dayton, Ohio, and a lot of Ohio cities kind of are jealous of the fact that you could just walk into having a conversation with LaFrae or look at art or see dance or run into artists on the street. And so, it's like that must have. So what was your first gig that came out of, like, you've gone through all this and you realize Oberlin's not your thing. Political science is not your world. I get that.
Yeah.
What was your first gig?
I was doing a lot of sitting in. There was a drummer who used to teach at Howard that I started taking some lessons with named Lee McKinney, and who I think is in Yellow Springs and still doing some teaching and maybe some at UD or something. I took some lessons with Lee, and I was sitting in a lot of places. The Night Owl used to have open kind of musician nights, and then I decided to go back to Oberlin. I was already halfway. I saw that there's a big Churchill quote as I was walking, so I was already halfway through hell, so I had to keep going. So I kept going. I finished the degree, but the carrot at the end of the stick was the fact that on graduation day, I told my mom I was going to continue to pursue music professionally. In college, I started playing around Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Detroit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were gigging.
Yeah, I was gigging.
You were really you were serious about it. Now, it's the thing with our parents when you finally tell them, this is what I'm going to do. There's a reaction. What was your reaction? Like, my parents were quiet. I'm a ballet dancer now. But yeah, it's all good.
Again, it's love, and we definitely. Rich knows I have a dramatic family. We're definitely on the drama side, and I literally put my arms on my mother's shoulders and looked her in the eye and said, I can do anything I want now, right? Because law school was what was supposed to be next. And I said, give me 5 years. Give me 5 years. And I went to start playing gigs, and of course, I did not go to law school.
Law school's loss because you make convincing arguments. And so, especially in the art realm. So for those to look at her extensive biography, you have played for some folks that I'm just kind of in awe of. You played with some jazz greats, some R&B greats, Nona Hendrix, the Nona Hendrix Experience. Oh my goodness, Cyndi Lauper, Nancy Sinatra with Morrissey. What? There's just a moment I'm sitting like, what? How does one gig as a professional artist and you get into those circles that someone at that level says, come on in, come play in our playground, play on our stage, play with us?
So what happened was I was in Cleveland, and I had the gigs that everyone coveted that were regular and paid the most, and I wasn't 30. And I wanted more. I wanted to try to be a larger pond, a little fish in a big pond. So I moved to New York. And actually, it's kind of wild because I was playing there's theaters in Cleveland where they run potential Broadway shows. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't the best show in the world. It was The Invisible Man, but it starred Jim Dale, who was awesome. And the crew was from New York, and they hired the pit musicians from Cleveland. So I got to know some people, and that led to an opening in a sublet in New York City at 107th and Broadway. And I hit the ground running. I moved to New York with a bag of clothes on the train with $600 and just immediately started sitting in a lot of places and giving my number to people. And this is really wild. I was on my way to play a show at a club, the St. Nicholas Pub at 148th and St. Nicholas in Harlem. And I needed a new head cover for my snare drum. So I stopped at 48th Street at Sam Ash, and I went to the drum store. And the guys in the drum store were kind of geeky and kind of funny. And they were like, we really want to hear you play. And it was 8 o'clock, and I think we started at 9:30. And so I was like, well, I'm playing at the the pub, like, I can't stop you from coming. And they came to the pub, because it felt weird, like these guys were going to follow me to this gig, and I was like, do we take the train? Exactly. Do we take the train together? I mean, they just sold me a piece of drum equipment, but here's where I'm going. They showed up, they stayed all night. Fast forward, the musical director who was working with Pharrell, who had just left the Neptunes, doing Khalees's record at the time, which was on Virgin Records. And
okay. Yeah, that's on the list. Yes, I remember.
And so the musical director for Khalees came in and said, Khalees really wants a band with a woman drummer. And they were like, oh, we just met this woman drummer. We just saw her play. And they gave my number, and that kind of started that whole thing. So random. Or was it?
I doubt it was random. The universe said, okay.
That's true. There are no coincidences.
There are no coincidences.
Yeah.
And so once that kicked in, what was it like to be in that, to have these band nerds or geeks, if we would like to call that, I don't know if that's PC, to all of a sudden who said, hey, here's this really cool lady doing her thing.
In college, I had one professor, Jerry Bruner, who I really loved, and I did a one-on-one. We read a lot of Carl Jung, one-on-one. I would read it and then go sit in his office, and we would have like an hour and a half of discussion. And I remember, we read like Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, and so there was that. And that professor and I had a wonderful relationship. And when I graduated, I went to see him, and he looked me in the eye, and he said, very seriously, he said, follow your intuition. The universe is your guide. And truer words were never spoken for me. And so I feel that I was definitely led to a lot of opportunities and experiences that I'm super grateful for, and led safely. So. Yeah,
I love that. And so, because we talked about this upstairs, and that was one of the things that this leading intuition, you talked about when you had an opportunity you talked about, how do I phrase this? Little fish in a big pond, ambitious, your ambitions, or, that's a thing for artists. You have this opportunity, you see the golden prize. There's a conversation I had on a podcast with Hannah Beekler about not all that glitters is gold. And so she's talking about it's a struggle. She has an Oscar, but everyone thinks that she can only do superhero movies. But she is probably one of the most film literate people I've ever met. She has this vast encyclopedic knowledge of cinematic history. And so she could design anything. So you had an opportunity for that gold moment with a really big one named star.
I signed an NDA.
Oh, snap. Okay, don't talk about her, but talk about the experience leading up to her.
Well, I think
away from her.
It was Beyonce, and the thing is that, the way our society, back to what I said about American Idol, music is good, music is bad, I have talent, you don't, this is what we do. We've compartmentalized creativity and left it to the experts, where really it's all of our opportunity to just use our voices and tell our story. We each have a unique story to be told. And I've seen young people write a song playing one note on a bass guitar, and without any facility or knowledge of, the canon and 10,000 hours of expertise. So I truly believe in great expression. Fortunately and unfortunately, I excel in performance, so I ended up on this path. And I realized when I got there that this wasn't who I am, and this wasn't what music was to me. For me, I realized, and it was crystallizing, it was a great process. Yeah. For me, music is about healing. Music is about building community. Music is about expression, not just entertainment, although that's great too. So when I had the opportunity to play with Beyonce, there were so many challenges. And also, all of my major label artists that I had worked with, when I was touring, like I was in a bunch of countries, but only saw the hotel and the green room. And I realized that I wanted to see the world, and I wasn't going to see it in this way. And then, I've always been a multi-hyphenate. I call myself an imaginationist. So I've always hustled and been able to work wearing a lot of different hats. And it actually, playing with Beyonce, I would have taken a pay cut. And it just wasn't worth it to me.
Wow.
In terms of to me, being able to tell people, I played with Beyonce, I didn't think would do anything for me.
That makes sense. I mean, it totally does. I mean, and I understand that in my small version of it.
Yeah.
In the sense of, a lot of people didn't understand it. I love the process of learning how to dance and learning choreography, and not necessarily the performance didn't. It wasn't about the performance. That was the end note. It was the voyage of discovery of falling and almost dropping a girl or not being on the beat and trying to figure out how to fit this and make it sing, how to make this dance come to life. That was more important than the actual performance stage. And people go, "You were wonderful," and I'm like, "Okay, that's nice." I had more fun figuring it out, and my curiosity about how to embody movement. So, yeah, it's not about the gold, because it's a pay cut. I mean, that's a telling statement. A lot of people think, "Oh, it's going to be this." They're going to back up the truck, and they're going to back up the.
Oh no!
Oh no!
That's not. No. In fact, her dad was like, they put us on a line and gave us this lecture, and they were like, "Do you think you're a star? Beyonce's the star." They were like, "Do you think you're going to make any money? Beyonce's going to make the money." And I was like, "What am I doing here? Like, this is just not my vibe." So
It's not, and it's okay.
Yeah.
This isn't your vibe, because so then.
The problem's not Beyonce. The problem was me. I had to go.
I know. I
had to go.
Right, and that's the whole
yeah.
thing. It's like, much love to the Beehive. We don't want anyone writing letters.
No, and this was back. This was back before that thing.
Before
this was the very first band solo.
First band solo.
Yeah, first band solo. So it was a different Beyonce kind of vibe.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
and we evolve.
Yeah.
and she has evolved. But I love the fact that knowing that crystallization of what you wanted versus what was given to you at that moment, and you said, when we talked about intuition in the universe, what did the universe provide for you as the alternate pathway?
It's interesting. I made friends with a guy who was a natural bodybuilder who would train me for free. And then I started training people, and I had about 12 clients at a gym that was walking distance from my house in Brooklyn. And I sort of had like this, I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. But I really enjoyed the whole like fitness thing and the intensity of working out with weights. And so I did that for a while, and then I ran into some opportunities with State Department touring, and that opened it up for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about the State Department touring, because I don't think people realize the State Department is in the art and cultural game. That's that poli-sci hat.
There you go.
Yeah, it is about the representation of democracy through art.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience, because that's an important experience for the United States and for the artists.
Sure. Yeah. Well, back in the day, jazz was considered America's sonic secret weapon. And the very first jazz ambassadors were Louis Armstrong, Dave Brubeck, and Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh, yeah.
And so these bands would go and play in areas where we just had very poor relations with other countries, and sort of start to build these connections and bridges. And so they changed the program to call from Jazz Ambassadors to American Music Abroad. And they started having hip hop and funk and jazz, folk, all these different types of music. So what I really loved about it was I got a chance to spend more time in the country on the ground, got a chance to meet people, got invited to dinner, got a chance to try the food. And then sometimes there would be a concert and then workshops, or sometimes there would be workshops and then a culminating concert. And it would be this really amazing, like the community would get involved and, you know, people would bring whatever, a pot or a pan and play, you know, you know, I remember when Chile had, I forgot what year it was, they had a horrible earthquake and we were the first band sent in and the theaters had fallen down because of the earthquake. So we were in a library. And there weren't chairs, and there were people on the floor, and people were seated all around my drum set. And everywhere we went, there was just this like, music is lifting us out of where we are because this is a really tough moment. And they hadn't even done excavation yet. It was wild. Like, we couldn't go down certain roads. Things were just ripped up. It looked like a Spielberg set, but it, you know, it was unbelievable. Yeah.
I'm Bonnie Miles, Membership Coordinator of CET. Thank you for listening to Rodney Veal's Inspired By. This podcast is a production of CET and ThinkTV, 2 local PBS stations. As PBS stations, the work we do online, on air, and in the community is supported by listeners like you. If you're enjoying the show and would like to support our work, please consider becoming a member at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Plus, when you sign up to donate at least $5 a month, you'll get access to special members-only streaming videos on the PBS app through Passport. Learn more at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org.
If you're enjoying this conversation, The Art Show, also hosted by Rodney Veal, is available to stream anytime from anywhere on YouTube or the PBS app.
Was the art ambassador, the Arts Abroad program, is that what led you to the residency in Russia? The work in Russia.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is like, see, we're all global influence, which I love. Yeah.
So some of the State Department people, I've always, I mean, if anybody here knows my mother, I've always been able, I've learned from her how to express, inspire, pull energy in a room, and get ideas across, and empower and be of service. These are things that were modeled for me. Yeah. And the State Department people used to joke that I could build a workshop for redheaded people with one arm born on Tuesday. And so the State Department, every embassy has a goal that they choose annually. And oftentimes it has to do with girls and women. And so some of the State Department people taught me how to apply for State Department grants, and I got a SAM number, and I created a corporate structure called Groove Diplomacy, based upon the idea that a groove makes you move and movement creates community, unity, and change. I got my own grants. I hired my friends. We would go in the country, hang out, play some shows. I got to pay everybody. It was beautiful. And one day I was doing a tour in Russia, and we were in Krasnoyarsk, Siberia, and it was my birthday. And the jet lag was ridiculous, but I stayed out because it was my birthday. And I ended up getting a ride home from the Minister of Culture, because there's no cabs. You have to call a cab. It's not like New York. Like I did go outside to hail a cab, and they were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm going back to my hotel." They were like, "Let us give you a ride." So I started talking about what I do. I was teaching at Jazz and Lincoln Center at the time. I teach improvisation. I work with young people. I write for orchestra. And that conversation led to me being invited to teach master classes, which led to 7 years of writing for an orchestra, and also creating a small group ensemble that played the major festivals in the region, these huge festivals, like 20,000 people on these amazing stages. And yeah, I spent a lot of time in Siberia.
Oh my goodness.
I did. Because see, the thing is that, and I know I'm going on, but the thing is that in Russia, at the time, the intellectual kind of things happened in St. Petersburg and Moscow, in the larger cities, whereas we know that the gulag, the prisoners were sent to Siberia, so they didn't invest in jazz. So I was the first person to teach jazz improvisation in Siberia, to classically trained kids. And it was the wildest thing because people would say, like, I don't like Americans, but I like you. And I would be like, how many Americans have you met? And they would be like, you. You know, or they would be like, oh, yeah, this music is a little bit less than. One teacher didn't want, because they, you know, the Russian classical thing is very, you know, it's real, it's amazing. You know, I remember walking through the conservatory and looking, I was like, all right, they were all Russian. Like, I just had to make that connection myself. And so they would make fun of me and talk about me, but invite me back every year and pay me handsomely.
They secretly. It was a secret love.
You know,
it was a secret love for what you were bringing to the table.
Well, one of my favorite books that I actually wrote my first jazz opera about was a Russian book by Bulgakov called The Master and Margarita. And the devil is a character in the book. And he's got this whole, like, beautiful thing where he says, like, you know, you need me. Right, you need me, like you would drown in the naked light. Like, I bring the dark shadows, and you need that. What do you want? A world with no trees? And he's got this whole thing. So I feel like I was the devil there, and so there we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
I love it. So 7 years ago. So I was, and I alluded to this at the beginning. When we had this lovely experience with City Folk. It was like a full circle because it was with City Folk, I was directing a show that was based upon what you had submitted to City Folk, I believe. Or did they approach you about doing a collaboration of dance and music? And it was Mary Lou Williams. Yeah. And that's how I was introduced to Mary Lou Williams. And you have not heard anything by Mary Lou Williams, you need to add it to your playlist.
Yeah.
It is phenomenal. But I remember that experience with you. So talk about from your perspective, because I know from my perspective choreographing to it, and there were other people who choreographed as well. It was just joy. Like it was a voyage of discovering this music. But
I mean, so I'm learning more and more there's a difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. Right. And so the transdisciplinary is when people from all these different disciplines come together and these things happen. That was a truly transdisciplinary experience. And I remember I was coaching jazz students from Stivers, and I met the keeper of Mary Lou Williams' charts. His name was Father Peter O'Brien. Just real quick, because this is such a story. Because Mary Lou Williams was the mother of bebop. So Thelonious Monk and Bud Powell and all the jazz people, after the clubs would close, would go to Mary Lou's house. And she kept everything. She would write things on napkins, and Rutgers had her archive. And I saw like charts where it was like Bud, Monk, Mary written in the corner, and she had 2 pianos in her house. And, you know, a lot of those cats got into situations where their lives were cut short. And I think she hit a zone where she was like, man, I'm not even feeling this anymore. Like, my people are gone. So she quit playing music, and she wasn't Catholic, but she started going to church because there was this really cool priest named Father Peter O'Brien, and he loved jazz. And he told her after a while, listen, Mary, you know, people need what you have. Like, why don't you go back to music and write music for peace? So she started writing with peace as sort of her intentional point. And she wrote masses and more jazz. Mm-hmm. And I had met Father Peter O'Brien and was like, I would love to see these charts. And then my email blew up. He was just like, what's your email? And he just started sending me all the charts. So I got to bring these charts to the kids at Stivers, and have them play this music and share this story. And there was, that was just fun. Did we perform at the Dayton Art Institute?
No, we performed at Sinclair Community College. We performed at Blair Hall.
Oh, that's
because
right.
I was still on staff at Sinclair.
That's right.
And it was, and I loved it because the music was so, it created this world, and I love creating these circular patterns with the dancers and the movement, and to get the joy of transdisciplinary and collaboration to create to live music.
Yeah.
You can't beat it. Like you can't, like you, as a choreographer, you're like, I can't pass that up. And then you get to work with this amazing lady.
It goes both ways now.
Yes, it's mutual admiration society. And I remember the kids from that just being, it truly, they still walk up to me and say, I remember that. I remember that dance. They start to show me the moves, and I go, wow.
That's great. Yeah.
That's really cool. So it was really cool, and being back. And so now you're back.
Yeah.
This is what I love. She is back with Muse Machine.
Which, can I just say something?
Yes.
I was in the very first Muse Machine musical. Rich, do you remember that? Do we know each other? It was West Side Story. And
No way. Were you? Okay.
yeah, it was a West Side Story. And we got to play at the Victory. We rehearsed at the Victory. And it was this really amazing, because it was like, what's her name? Susie Bassani?
Bassani, who Force of
Right?
Nature. If you did
Force
not
of
know Susie-
Nature. But it was like
She could
kind
get
of the
money out of
first
anyone.
time that like these Oakwood kids and these Tip City kids and these West Dayton kids and some Beaver Creek kids were all together.
And let's put on a show.
And at the biggest place in town.
And put it on in a professional way.
You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. That was no joke.
But I still remember like the choreography from the gym scene. I do. Yeah.
Because
so.
that would have been Nate Horn.
Oh
who
God,
choreographed it.
you're right.
Nate Horn was the choreographer.
That name is familiar.
Yeah, he was the he was a choreographer for a long time
Was
with
it
Muse Machine.
Horn?
If I got this correct.
Nat.
Not
Okay.
Nate. Nat.
Okay.
Nat Horn.
Well, I just know that I could do it right now.
No.
I
We will not
won't.
force you to do it.
I'm not gonna do it,
No, we're
'cause
not forcing you to do it, but I love the fact you remember it. And
Yeah.
so now you're back with Muse Machine.
Yeah.
And I love this, and I love what you're doing with them and bringing with their Summer Institute for Educators. Bringing funk into the classroom.
Yeah, the funky
Because
classroom.
I mean, funk needs to be in everybody's home and classroom, but I digress.
So I play in a band called the Burnt Sugar Orchestra, and it was founded by Greg Tate, who passed away, but he's actually a Dayton native. And Greg Tate wrote prolifically about Black music. He wrote for The Village Voice. He had a couple of books, Everything But the Burden and Flyboy and the Buttermilk 1 and 2. He was very famous for cultural observations and a turn of phrase in a really like poignant kind of way. But he was also just this really amazing, big-hearted guy, groove, and was from Dayton. And so Jared Michael Nickerson is the business head of the Burnt Sugar Orchestra, who's also from Dayton. And when Muse Machine asked me if I would consider the possibility of creating a funk institute, a funky classroom, I mentioned it to Jared Michael Nickerson. Unfortunately, Greg passed away a couple of years ago. And Jared was like, oh yeah, Frey, we were at the Battle of the Bands and we would practice and we would do, and I was like, wait, what? And then suddenly he was like, yeah, let me give you the number of my friend Kenny. And then I called Kenny, and then Kenny gave me someone's number. And then there was suddenly this amazing youth-driven teacher mentorship, West Dayton story that predates the Ohio Players and Phaso and Zap and Platypus and Sun and Lakeside and but most of the people in those bands came out of this Battle of the Bands that was happening on the west side of Dayton.
And the high school bands.
High school bands.
Dayton was notorious for its high school bands because I was a drum major.
So
it tells you everything you need to know about
there
me.
you go. Okay, I love that.
Gotta
So
lead.
I was like, well, this is a story that I think educators can connect to, because it was educators that supported these young people that got them going to this particular situation.
I love that. So like now you're bringing these teachers along into funk and our buddy around. So what would be the one? You're a couple days into it, and I would love to hear your thoughts on where it sits, where you're at with that. But we're going to pause for a moment with our little baby. Aw. You've been awesome.
So me and Emily had multiple meetings in person, and there's Emily there from Muse Machine, and Cynthia next to her, one of the teachers. And we went through the story, getting the questions together, because basically, let me say that the end point is we have 30-some, if not 40 teachers from all over Dayton understanding the history of the Battle of the Bands, the roots of Dayton funk, and it's sliced up from the perspective of a social emotional teacher, a math teacher, a history teacher, a social studies teacher, and it's connected to Ohio teaching standards, and teachers are figuring out ways to continue to connect it to Ohio teaching standards. And listen, my friend told me, he was like, look, I know everything about the feudal system, but I don't know anything about what happened in my own town. You know what I mean? So for a Dayton-centric story and teaching kind of approach to be given to Dayton teachers is just, to me, I'm so excited to see what the impact of this will continue to be, because these are seeds that are being planted.
And what I love about that, and I'm excited because I get to talk about, I will be there tomorrow to talk about teaching in the classroom, and what it means to inspire people, young people, because I did it for so long.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it at the same parallel track. There's something about teaching that I'm always going to have a soft spot for teachers, because I remember, I was telling LaFrae earlier, Mr. Gallo, Mr. Thomas, Miss Sutton, that these people saw things in me that I could not see in myself, and I didn't see the future. Yeah. But they were planting, like to your point, planting those seeds, that kind of building up to this moment, because this was not on the bingo card of life to host a podcast and a television show and have a dance career and to do it in your hometown.
Right, but I mean, those aren't the things, but you are also like a pillar in terms of serving board service and kind of that whole background of things being created in terms of creating spaces, which is so important.
It is, but I love, and that's why I love our experience at City Folk, because that gave an opportunity and a platform for you to interact and engage with those students from Stivers and those dancers from all over. We had dancers from Centerville,
that's right,
and Tip City. They were from all over, and it's like the United Colors of Benetton and United Nations.
Yeah,
when you bring people together in a creative and artistic way, which our city has the capacity to do, magic happens. That funk is everywhere. Yeah. This is a global, all roads lead to Dayton, Ohio. Yeah. And so the fact that you are working with these 40 teachers is exciting.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
I can't wait. I mean, we'll have to have a follow-up podcast about what happened a year after to see where people are.
I mean, I look forward to that. All the teaching artists are definitely of a certain age. And I just was like, I really want a younger person so that we can have like this more intergenerational thing. And I reached out to you, and you recommended a young person, Mariah Johnson, who was your student.
One of my former students at Stivers.
So, and she is an amazing connector. And she got all those teachers doing Dayton-centric line dancing. and
love it.
Yeah, all kinds of movement, and so thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And that's, I mean, I can't think of anything greater than service. Selfishness, the greed, it will not lead to anything. But if you could figure out a way to connect people, bring them in a room with some water and some snacks and a great conversation with LaFrae and be inspired by it, hey, go for it. That's the thing. So I don't know where we're at with time, because Mike is our 45 minutes. Oh, we're 45? Okay. All right. See, I get to do things as the host. I'm kind of curious what you talk about being in service, and I talk about it being in service. What would be your advice to anyone about where to jumpstart or kickstart that inspiration that they need to be in service for others?
That's an interesting question. I know for me, my brand of service comes through my passion, and that doesn't always have to be the case, because we can just help somebody, volunteer somewhere. But for me, the brand of service that I really feel that brings inspiration is the fact that I so soulfully, and my definition of soul is putting your whole self into something, which is akin to putting your foot in it. And I so soulfully embody my belief in the other person reaching a certain goal. So if somebody wanted to get in service, I would say follow your bliss, and then look to just help somebody. Just be available to help somebody. You never know.
I would agree.
Yeah.
It's not just, be inspired to create, but inspired to hold the door for somebody, clean the garage out, help a neighbor who, play a record for them, play some music, because that's what holds us together in our community. And what I love is the fact that you've been here, you've gone away, you've come back. Mm-hmm. What would you say has surprised you the most about Dayton and its evolution? I love. See, I get serious all of a sudden. I'm so sorry.
I think all the new things that I'm seeing around this area in downtown, it's a really beautiful energy, and I really hope that, because I really don't know, I really hope that all of the powers that be find a way to collaborate and grow together, because we have all these spaces and all these possibilities. So
a lot of talented people.
A lot of talented people. A lot of passionate people.
A lot of talented,
a lot of soulful people.
Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
And so there's a project that I did not talk to you about, which I know is dear to your heart, and that's the Willie Mae Rock Camp. Do I get the title right?
Yeah. I can make this really quick. Should I?
No, there's no about quickness.
Oh, okay.
Tell the story, because it's very fascinating about this combination of the components. I love the fact that you pulled these together, and I always dream of pulling all those components together, especially with technology.
So okay, Willie Mae was Big Mama Thornton, who sang Hound Dog before Elvis and Ball and Chain. Okay, everybody's nodding, And so
the audience, the crowd's good.
So in the 90s, there was a movement in the Pacific Northwest, the Riot Girl movement. And in Portland, Oregon, they started a rock camp for girls with the idea of creating space for girls to empower them. New York started Willie Mae Rock Camp 2 years later, and with the same idea. So the second, we're now the oldest rock camp because the other one sunsetted, unfortunately. I volunteered as a band coach and a teaching artist for 7 summer camps, and week-long, and it was amazing. I saw in 1 week kids who had no facility and had never played an instrument, by Saturday being on a stage with their band, playing a song that they wrote, wearing merch and logos that they had designed, and I was forever changed by that experience and how little it takes to really empower. In 2018, they asked me if I would step into leadership. I said I had no interest in running a rock fantasy camp. In 2019, they said, you could change it. And at this point, I'm a technologist, and I had really gotten deep into technology and the science of sound. So I reimagined it as a STEM-based music program, teaching the physics, the engineering, the math, using analog and modular electronics, DIY, circuit bending, and of course musical expression, because we're named after and we stand on the shoulders of Willie Mae Big Mama Thornton. The blues is the roots and everything else is the fruits. And so we have tripled our impact and are in the process of building new spaces and in 15 partner locations across the 5 boroughs of New York City.
I'm just, yeah, that's, you talk about, you're putting, you're making us all look bad. You're working so hard, but you're not working hard because you love what you love what you do. And so I'm lucky. I feel like the luckiest man in the world that I get to sit next to you and I get to have collaborated with you. And I look forward to collaborating with you again. I will figure this out. There's going to be some movement happening with some music and sound. We just have to figure it out. We'll find a way. We'll find a way. LaFrae, you are truly a Dayton original. That is that phrase that should be only applied to you sometimes. I just think other folks should stop. That's just me. You're amazing. So this has been a lovely conversation.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for coming out.
Thank you all. I mean, you could have been anywhere tonight, but you came here.
So thank
Thanks.
you. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, much love.
You're just amazing. That's amazing.